The wedding was just starting, and the guests were all seated, their murmurs a dull hum in the background. The music swelled, an elegant and solemn piece that mirrored the grandeur of the occasion. My son stood tall at the altar, his back straight, the same way he used to stand when he was a little boy, proud of himself after a soccer game or an exam he aced. I could see him now, fully grown, a man ready to take on the world. But what he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I was falling apart inside. I had raised him to believe in loyalty, in the sanctity of love, in the idea that a man's word was his bond. I had been the one to teach him how to respect a woman, to cherish her, to hold her hand through the storm. But I, of all people, knew that love was not always a fairy tale. It was complicated, messy, and sometimes even cruel. And as I looked at him, standing there with the woman who was about to become his wife, I couldn't help but feel like a fraud. He had grown up believing that I was the rock in our family, the one who could withstand anything. But the truth was, I had broken long before he knew it. I couldn't help but wonder what my son would do when he faced his first real challenge in his marriage. Would he be strong enough to endure? Would he, like me, falter under the weight of temptation? Or would he, like her, walk away when things got too hard? I watched as she stood beside him, her smile radiant, her eyes sparkling with the joy of the day. She was beautiful, no doubt. But there was something about her that unsettled me. Something I couldn't quite put my finger on. Maybe it was the way she held my son's arm a little too possessively, or the way her lips curved into a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. It wasn't that I didn't want the best for him. I did more than anything. But the woman standing beside him, the woman he was about to commit himself to, had always been a bit of a mystery to me. I had raised my son with love, with tenderness, and with care. But I hadn't raised him to see the darker sides of love, the sides that could consume you, destroy you, and leave you hollow inside. As the vows began, I found myself losing focus. My mind wandered, slipping back into the past, to a time when things were simpler, when I was a man full of hope and certainty. It had been so long since I'd allowed myself to feel like that, hopeful and certain. I was a man who had been betrayed, cheated on, and left to pick up the pieces. I remembered how she had looked at me once, all those years ago, her eyes full of passion, full of fire. I remembered the late nights, the whispered words, the stolen moments. But what I also remembered were the lies, the secrets, the feeling of betrayal that cut deeper than anything I had ever known. She had promised me forever, and yet, in the blink of an eye, she was gone. And here I was, sitting alone at my son's wedding, with a nameplate that read "Low," as if I was no longer even part of the story. I had raised him, guided him, loved him, yet it felt like none of that mattered now. It was as if my past was being erased, replaced by this new life, this new family. As the ceremony continued, I fought to keep my composure. I didn't want my son to see the hurt in my eyes. I didn't want him to know that the man he admired had his own demons, demons that he would one day face in his own life. But there was a gnawing feeling in the pit of my stomach, a feeling I couldn't ignore. It was the same feeling I had when I first met her, the same feeling that had never quite left, even when I had tried to bury it beneath years of pain and loss. I glanced at her again, her smile so sweet, so innocent. But behind that smile, I saw the same darkness that had once consumed me, the same hunger, the same desire, the same need to feel something, anything, when everything else seemed to slip away. I had told myself that I had moved on, that I had let go of the past. But as I watched my son exchange vows with the woman who had been in my life, I realized just how wrong I was. The reception had been a blur of laughter, clinking glasses, and forced pleasantries. I stood near the back of the room, nursing a glass of whiskey, trying to avoid the well-meaning but intrusive guests. They came up to congratulate me, asking questions I wasn't prepared to answer. Was I proud? Was I happy? The answers felt too complicated for words. Instead, I gave them my best smile, the one I had perfected over the years. But as the night wore on, I found myself retreating further into my own thoughts. I hadn't realized how much I had been holding in until this moment, surrounded by the people who had come to celebrate my son's future. I had once been the center of his world, the one he turned to for everything. But now, I was just a spectator, a shadow in the background of his new life. And then, unexpectedly, she was there, standing in front of me, looking as stunning as ever. Her eyes locked onto mine, and for a moment, the noise of the room faded away. She was no longer the young woman I had once known. She was the woman who had left me, the woman who had taken my heart with her and shattered it without a second thought. But now, she was married. She belonged to my son. The reality of that hit me like a ton of bricks. She was smiling, but there was something different about it. Something guarded. Her lips were pulled into a smile, but her eyes were weary, heavy with unspoken thoughts. "Dad," she said softly, her voice like a melody I hadn't heard in years. "How are you doing?" I couldn't answer her right away. How could I? After everything that had happened between us, how could I possibly give her the truth? I took another sip of my drink, feeling the warmth spread through me. I was searching for something to hold on to, some kind of clarity. But all I could think of was the past, the nights we had spent together, the quiet moments when it had just been the two of us against the world. "I'm fine," I said finally, my voice hoarse. "It's just a lot to take in." She nodded, her gaze dropping briefly before meeting mine again. There was a flicker of something in her eyes, something I hadn't seen in a long time. Regret, maybe. Or was it desire? "I know I hurt you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "and I can't take that back. But I needed to tell you that I'm sorry." She paused, looking away, as if she was trying to summon the courage to speak again. "I never wanted to hurt you. You were everything to me." The words hit me like a tidal wave, and I felt myself flinch. I had told myself that I had moved on, that I was over her. But hearing those words, hearing her acknowledge the pain she had caused, it opened a wound that had never fully healed. "Why?" I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop it. "Why did you leave me, after everything we had?" She looked down at the floor, her eyes filled with a kind of sadness I hadn't seen in years. "I was scared. I was scared of being tied down, of losing myself. I thought I wanted something else, someone else. And in the end, I was the one who lost everything." I felt a bitter laugh rise in my throat, but I swallowed it back down. It was all too familiar, the same excuses, the same hollow words. She had said the same things when she had left me all those years ago. I had heard it all before, but it never made the pain any less. "I should have fought harder," I said, more to myself than to her. She reached out, her hand hovering just above mine. I felt the heat of her touch, the electricity that had once sparked between us, and for a moment, it was as if nothing had changed. I was the man she had once loved, and she was the woman who had taken my heart. "You were always enough," she whispered. "You still are." But her words didn't bring me comfort. Instead, they ignited something inside me, something dangerous. I was a man who had lived with betrayal for so long, and now in this fleeting moment, the old wounds were reopening, pulling me back into the past. For a brief, dangerous second, I considered what it would feel like to take her hand, to let the old feelings rush back in, to ignore the years of pain, and to surrender to the lust that had never fully gone away. But I couldn't. I wouldn't. Not again. My son was standing across the room, laughing with his friends, blissfully, unaware of the tension that was hanging between me and the woman he was about to marry. I could see him, his smile, his joy, and for the first time that night I realized something that chilled me to the core. I couldn't let him see me like this. I couldn't let him see how vulnerable, how broken I still was. "I think I need some air," I said, my voice steady despite the storm that was raging inside me. She nodded, stepping back, her hand slowly falling to her side. "I understand." As I walked away from her, my mind was a whirlwind. I had wanted answers, but now that I had them, I wasn't sure if they were what I needed. The truth had come out, but it only left me feeling more lost than before. The night was far from over, but for me it felt like the beginning of something darker, something that had been brewing inside me for years, waiting for the right moment to explode. The night air outside was cool, a sharp contrast to the warmth of the reception hall I had just left. The sky was clear, the stars distant and indifferent to the turmoil brewing inside me. I stood at the edge of the terrace, my hands gripping the railing as I tried to calm the storm inside my chest. The sounds of the wedding party drifted out to me, muffled, but they couldn't mask the racing thoughts in my head. I tried to focus on my son, on the man he was becoming, but the image of her lingered in my mind. The way her lips trembled as she spoke those words, the way her eyes softened for just a moment before she turned away. It was all too familiar. It was as if no time had passed, as if the years of separation had never happened. I had been a fool to believe I had let her go. I had been a fool to think that I could simply erase her from my life, from my memories. The truth was, she had never really left. She had just become another ghost I carried with me, haunting me at the most unexpected moments. Dad? I turned, to see my son standing in the doorway, his face lit by the warm light from inside. He looked so young, so full of hope, as if he had everything figured out. I wanted to hold on to that image of him, to keep him as the boy who trusted me with his life. But something was shifting between us, something I couldn't explain. "Hey, son," I said, trying to smile. "Everything okay?" He took a few steps closer, his brow furrowed in concern. "Yeah, just needed a moment to clear my head," I lied, shaking my head. "It's a big day." He nodded, but his eyes were sharp, as if he could see through my facade. "You're not the only one feeling the weight of it all," he said, his voice low. For a moment I thought he might say more, but he didn't. He just stood there, his gaze fixed on the horizon. I could sense that he was thinking about something he wasn't ready to say. "I'm proud of you, son," I said finally. "You've done well." He didn't respond at first, just looked down at his shoes. Then, as if something had shifted within him, he looked up at me, his eyes filled with something I couldn't quite place. "I just want you to be happy," he said, his voice hesitant. "I don't want to see you, lost." The words hit me harder than I expected. Lost. It was as if he knew. He could see the cracks in my armor. He knew that I was struggling, that I was holding on to something that was slipping away. "I'm not lost," I said, my voice a little too sharp. "I've been through a lot, but I'm not lost." For a moment, neither of us spoke. I could feel the distance between us, a gulf that had never been there before. My son had always been my anchor, the one person who kept me grounded when everything else seemed to fall apart. But now, it felt like we were on different paths that were slowly drifting apart. "I know," he said quietly, before turning, to head back inside. "But if you ever need to talk..." "I'll be fine," I interrupted. "Go enjoy your night." He hesitated for a second before nodding and walking back into the reception hall. As I watched him disappear through the door, I felt a pang of guilt. He didn't know the half of it. He didn't know that the woman he was about to marry had once been mine, had once been the love of my life, the one who had broken me, and yet still managed to haunt me. The door shut behind him with a soft click, leaving me alone again. And just like that, the weight of the night came crashing down on me. The temptation, the desire to return to the past, was overwhelming. She had walked away once, but now, she was back. She was standing beside my son, but in my heart, she would always be mine. I needed to get control of myself. I had to stop this madness before it consumed me completely. But every part of me, every aching, broken part, screamed that I couldn't. A moment passed, and the temptation became unbearable. I walked toward the door where she had disappeared moments earlier, drawn by an invisible force, an urge I had spent years trying to bury. I couldn't explain it. Maybe it was the alcohol. Maybe it was the way she had looked at me, so vulnerable, so regretful. Or maybe it was something deeper, something primal, that had never truly gone away. I didn't know what I expected to find when I pushed the door open and stepped back inside. But as soon as I entered the room, I saw her across the floor, her back turned to me, her posture rigid. The music swirled around the room, but in that moment, it all felt distant. I took a few steps toward her, my heart pounding in my chest. When she turned and saw me, the look in her eyes was unreadable. She didn't smile, didn't acknowledge me at first, but then, as if she couldn't hold it back any longer, she looked at me, her gaze softening. "You shouldn't be here," she said quietly, her voice filled with the same mix of longing and fear that had always existed between us. "I know," I replied, my voice hoarse. "But here I am." The words hung in the air between us, heavy with unspoken meaning. "You're married," I said, my chest tightening, "to him." Her face faltered for a moment, as if she had just remembered that she was no longer mine. "I know," she said softly, her voice barely audible over the music. "But you'll always be a part of me. I can't change that." And in that moment, all the years of pain, all the betrayals, all the lost love, none of it mattered. I was standing here, in this room, with the woman I had once loved, and the temptation, the desire, it was stronger than ever. She reached out, her hand trembling slightly, and I knew what was about to happen. The past was closing in on us, and I couldn't stop it. The world slowed, time stretching out in a painful eternity as she took a tentative step toward me. My breath caught in my throat, the weight of the past, the mistakes, the regrets, all crashing down in a wave that threatened to drown me. I stood there, frozen, my mind at war with itself. Every fiber of my being screamed for me to turn away, to walk out the door and leave it all behind. But something darker, something far more dangerous, held me rooted to the spot. Her hand hovered near mine, trembling as if she too was torn between two worlds. The distance between us had always been there, but now it felt like a vast chasm, one that neither of us could cross. And yet, we were standing at its edge, the temptation to fall into each other's arms almost too much to bear. "I shouldn't," I whispered, my voice betraying the storm inside me. I took a step back, but she reached out, her fingers brushing against my skin. The contact was electric, as if she had ignited a spark that I had buried deep within myself for years. "I know," she said softly, her voice almost a plea. "But this isn't just about us, is it? It's about what we never had. What we still want." The words hit me harder than I expected. They echoed through my mind, a cruel reminder of everything I had lost. She had walked away from me once, and now here we were, on the verge of repeating the same mistakes. But she was married. She belonged to my son. The thought of that, the thought of what this could mean if anyone found out, made my head spin. But the pull, the desire, was overwhelming. "Why did you come back?" I asked, the question hanging in the air between us. "Why now, when everything is different? When you've moved on?" She looked at me, her eyes full of sadness and something else, something I couldn't quite place. "Because I never stopped thinking about you," she admitted. I've tried to forget, to move on, to make it work with him. But I can't." I stared at her, her confession sinking in. The years of silence between us suddenly felt insignificant. The weight of the past, the betrayal, the pain, it all seemed to dissolve in the face of this one moment. In the face of this one undeniable truth. We were still drawn to each other, still bound by something neither of us could control. "I should go," I said, my voice shaking with the conflict inside me. I turned to walk away, but she grabbed my arm, pulling me back. "No," she said, her grip firm. "I don't want you to go." Not like this. I looked at her, my heart torn between the man I was now and the man I once was. The man who loved her, who trusted her, who had given everything to make our family work. And yet, here I was, at the edge of something forbidden, something dangerous. I don't know what to do anymore, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Neither do I, she replied. But we're here, aren't we? And maybe that means something. I felt a fire ignite in my chest, a fire that I couldn't put out no matter how hard I tried. The pull between us was undeniable, a magnetic force that couldn't be ignored. And in that moment, the consequences didn't matter. Nothing mattered except the need to feel something, anything, to break free from the suffocating silence that had haunted me for so long. Her lips were so close now, I could feel her breath on my skin. My mind screamed at me to stop, to walk away, to think of my son, to think of the future. But all I could think about was the way she had once made me feel, the way she had once been everything to me. The kiss came as an inevitability. The moment our lips touched, the world around us seemed to fade away. All the years of pain, the years of heartache, the years of waiting, none of it mattered now. In that moment, there was only her. Only the feel of her body against mine, the taste of her kiss, the flood of emotions that had been buried deep inside for so long. But as the kiss deepened, as the heat between us grew, the reality of what was happening began to settle in. I pulled away, breathless, my chest heaving with a mixture of desire and guilt. "This is wrong," I said, my voice cracking. "We can't do this." She looked at me, her eyes filled with tears. "I know," she whispered, "but I don't know how to stop." I stepped back, putting space between us, trying to clear my head. I couldn't look at her anymore. I couldn't see the woman I once loved, and the woman who had left me standing in the ruins of our marriage, torn between her and my son. "You have to go back," I said, my voice hard. "This can't happen." She nodded, wiping her tears away, though. Her hand trembled as it moved to her cheek. "I'll go," she said quietly. "But know this, nothing has changed. Not for me." I watched her walk away, her silhouette disappearing into the crowd, swallowed up by the music and the laughter. But I was left standing there, hollow and broken, with the weight of everything that had just happened pressing down on me. My son was married now. The woman I once loved, the woman who had betrayed me, was married to him. And I was left alone, standing on the edge of my own broken heart, wondering what would become of me now.